Welcome to Boring Podcast. This time we're talking about dragon origins, a global history. You've made it to a quiet little corner of the internet. I'm really glad you're here. Take a slow, gentle breath and let your eyes start to soften. There's nothing you need to do right now, nothing to fix, nothing to chase. This moment is just for you. You are safe here exactly as you are. Let the world outside fade away for a while. Let your mind float freely as we quietly wander through the past together, like pages turning in a book you don't need to finish. And if this feels like a nice place to rest, you're welcome to like and subscribe only if it feels right in your heart. And if you're still awake, I'd love to know what time it is for you and where in the world you're listening from. I think that's a beautiful thing to share.
Today, we're going to explore the fascinating journey of dragons. It's more than just a look at mythical creatures, though. We'll uncover how our own human minds, our deepest fears, and even some surprising real-world discoveries actually brought these powerful symbols into being. We'll gently trace their earliest appearances across many different civilizations, understand why they look so different in the East and West, and even ponder why they continue to capture our imaginations even today. It truly is a story that spans millennia and continents, woven right into the fabric of human experience, and we're going to explore every thread.
Let's begin by reflecting on something quite fundamental: the deep-seated fears that humans have evolved with over countless generations. Our brains are truly wired to react instinctively to things that might pose a danger, and you can observe this even in very young children. Think about how a toddler might recoil from something like a snake or a spider, even if they've never been harmed by one. It's almost as if that wariness is simply built right into us, you know?
That's a really insightful point. And these primal fears aren't just limited to smaller creatures that might bite or sting. They extend to larger, more formidable predators as well. Imagine for a moment early humans, perhaps millions of years ago, navigating a world that was constantly filled with genuine threats. You can almost picture the swift, silent movements of a big cat, like a lion or a leopard, lurking in the shadows, or the sudden, terrifying swoop of a large bird of prey from high above. These weren't just abstract dangers. They were real, immediate threats to survival. Our ancient brains, through an incredible and long process of evolution, became incredibly finely tuned to identify and react to these very specific dangers. So even something as subtle as a rustling in the undergrowth or a fleeting shadow could trigger a powerful instinctual panic response. It was all about ensuring survival in a dangerous world.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you consider that survival mechanism, it's not just about the movement, it's also deeply tied to very specific physical traits that consistently elicit that fear. Think about the sharp, tearing teeth and formidable claws of a predator, for instance, perfectly adapted for hunting. Or the distinctive, unnerving slither of a snake, a motion that just seems to unsettle us. Our survival mechanisms are so deeply ingrained, so profoundly effective, that we are, in a very real sense, born with the predisposition to be wary of these particular forms and movements. It makes you wonder, if you were an early human, just how constantly alert your senses would have to be, living surrounded by these primal dangers every single day. Every unfamiliar sound, every fleeting glimpse would immediately register as a potential threat, right?
It's a powerful thought, isn't it? And because early humans faced such a multitude of diverse predators, the human imagination, driven by these very fears, began to combine these terrifying traits into something even more potent, a kind of ultimate threat. Anthropologist David Jones made a fascinating observation about this, noting that dragons are essentially a combo of everything that terrified early humans.
A combo?
Yeah, it's almost as if our brains decided to create the most terrifying creature imaginable by pulling together all the worst, most frightening characteristics they encountered in their environment.
That mental mashup is incredibly vivid to picture, isn't it? You can almost see it taking shape in the mind's eye. The powerful, sweeping wings of a bird of prey, capable of snatching things from the ground with incredible speed. The piercing fangs of a big cat, designed for a lethal, devastating bite. The protective, scaly hide of a snake or crocodile, making it almost impervious to attack. And the formidable, thrashing tail of a crocodile, a weapon in itself. There's even an archaeological theory that suggests people literally envisioned dragons by mixing these specific animal parts they might have imagined a creature with. What was it? The head of a crocodile, the scales of a snake, the fur of a tiger, and the wings of an eagle.
Exactly that kind of composite image.
It sounds like something from a child's wildest drawing, but it was born from a deep, primal fear, a composite of all dangers.
It really is a testament to the power of the human imagination under duress. This wasn't a conscious, deliberate design in the way an artist might plan a new creature for a story. Instead, it was an imaginative process that emerged organically, driven by the sheer, overwhelming nature of fear and the constant need for vigilance. Our minds were synthesizing bits of all the most terrifying animals known at the time, creating a super predator that represented the ultimate threat. It was, in a way, a cognitive shortcut, consolidating all potential dangers into one awe-inspiring, formidable form that could be recognized and reacted to instantly.
Building on that, our survival instincts also keyed into something even more fundamental than specific animals.
The inherent fear of darkness. Think about the profound apprehension we feel in unknown spaces, like a deep, shadowy cave or a dense, impenetrable forest at night. In those voids where our vision is obscured and our senses heightened, our minds could easily fill the blackness with imagined monsters. It's a very natural response, isn't it? To project fear onto the unseen, to populate the void with what we dread most.
Absolutely. And then there's fire. For early humans, fire held a profound, complex duality. On one hand, it was a source of life-saving warmth and light, a protector against predators, a tool for cooking. But on the other, it was a devastating, uncontrollable force that could burn everything it touched, destroying homes and livelihoods.
A real double-edged sword. Precisely. It's easy to connect the dragon's fire breath to this complex relationship with fire, seeing it as a powerful, destructive, and deeply unknown danger. This really highlights how our instincts tend to overinterpret threats, a phenomenon sometimes called hyperactive agency detection. A simple rustling in a bush or a fleeting glowing light from decaying wood might not just be a natural phenomenon. Our brains could perceive it as the first sign of something monstrous, planting the very seed for a dragon story, even before the creature itself was fully formed in their minds.
That's truly fascinating, this idea that evolution essentially programmed our brains to play it safe. It meant that when our ancestors faced a potential threat, it was always more beneficial from a survival perspective to overreact, to assume the worst, than to dismiss something that turned out to be genuinely real and dangerous.
Better safe than sorry.
This fundamental wiring implies that our brains are almost inclined to imagine the worst-case scenario simply as a protective measure.
Precisely. And when ancient hominids would encounter something truly unusual, perhaps the colossal bones of creatures long extinct or strange, imposing beasts they'd never seen before, well, their ingrained threat detection systems would quickly jump to the conclusion of a monster. They didn't have the scientific framework we do today to understand fossils or newly discovered species, so their protected instincts filled in the blanks with the most terrifying possibilities their minds could conjure.
Right.
This better safe than sorry creative wiring, which was so deeply ingrained for survival, almost certainly played a pivotal role in the very birth of dragons, merging the primal fears of snakes, large predators, the unknown dangers of darkness, and the destructive power of fire into a single, awe-inspiring ultimate predator that lived powerfully in their minds, even if not physically in their world.
As we continue our journey, it's worth taking a moment to quietly reflect on how these deep-seated human fears shaped our earliest stories. The mind's amazing capacity to imagine danger, even when unseen, truly laid the groundwork for creatures like dragons.
It really sets the stage, doesn't it?
So it wasn't just our internal fears that spurred the imagination. Imagine early humans, tens of thousands of years ago, wandering across ancient landscapes and stumbling upon something truly colossal.
Yeah.
The bones of creatures that had been extinct for millennia. Without the context of modern paleontology, these immense discoveries would have been terrifying and utterly mysterious. It's easy to see how they were often misread as the remains of something utterly monstrous, something we'd come to call dragons.
They absolutely were, and we have concrete examples that illustrate this beautifully. Chinese scholars as early as 300 BC recorded finding large fossilized bones, and without the benefit of modern scientific understanding, they unequivocally labeled them dragon bones.
Wow, 300 BC? That's early.
It is. In reality, of course, these were the remnants of dinosaurs or other large, long-extinct mammals. One particularly famous instance happened much later in 1335, when an Ice Age woolly rhinoceros skull was discovered in Germany, and widely believed to be the skull of a dragon, fitting right into their existing folklore.
And you can easily picture it, can't you? How something like the immense spine or a jagged skull of a dinosaur, say a stegosaurus with its plates, would have appeared to ancient observers. It wouldn't have looked like the remnants of an animal they knew, but rather the colossal, terrifying remains of some giant reptilian creature.
Exactly.
People even took these dinosaur or mammoth bones and pulverized them, turning them into dragon bones powder, believing it held powerful medicinal properties.
That's right. Used in traditional medicine for centuries.
It makes you reflect on these bones as nature's own ancient puzzles and how our ancestors pieced them together not with scientific tools, but with their deepest fears and wildest imaginations.
It's a perfect way to put it, how observation and imagination converged. And it wasn't just fossils that inspired these myths. We can also look to living creatures that were so immense or unusual that they too were mistaken for dragons or sea monsters. Imagine ancient sailors far from shore encountering enormous whales surfacing from the deep, perhaps spouting water into the air, or colossal sharks, powerful and swift, gliding just beneath the surface.
Terrifying encounters.
They would have returned to shore with awestruck tales describing terrifying sea serpents and immense beasts of the deep.
Oh, absolutely. There are specific instances of this from ancient cultures. In ancient China, for example, the bones of beached whales, especially their massive ribs, were sometimes interpreted as the ribs of dragons, simply because of their immense otherworldly size compared to anything else known.
Mm-hmm.
And think about the imposing presence of large Nile crocodiles. They can grow up to 18 feet long, and along riverbanks, they must have appeared like small, living dragons to early observers, fearsome and ancient.
And we still see this connection today, quite literally, with the Komodo dragon.
Right. It's in the name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This 10-foot Indonesian lizard, complete with its venomous bite and razor-sharp teeth, is actually called a dragon in our modern language. It must have profoundly impressed islanders centuries ago when they first encountered it, truly embodying the mythical creatures of their stories. Other powerful reptiles also likely contributed significantly to dragon lore. The massive Indian pythons, the formidable mosasaurs, those giant marine reptiles from prehistoric times, and even modern monitor lizards, like the Australian goannas, easily fitting into dragon narratives in various cultures around the world because of their size and reptilian appearance.
Then there's the fascinating realm of large fish or whale remains found along coastlines. When ancient peoples discovered the massive bones of large fish or whales washed ashore, perhaps after a great storm, it naturally led them to imagine vast sea monsters dwelling in the ocean's depths, creatures powerful enough to leave such remains.
A truly compelling example of this is fossilized shark teeth. For centuries, they were referred to, remarkably, as tongue stones, and were widely believed to be the petrified tongues of dragons or giant serpents.
Tongue stones.
Wow. Isn't that something? It's quite easy to connect coastal myths of serpents in the ocean to both direct sightings of unusually large, coiling snakes in the water, but also to the interpretation of these immense whale skeletons washed ashore, which would have looked like immense coiled serpents when discovered piece by piece along the beach.
And we can also consider how stories of dragons could have originated from long-held legends about truly extinct megafauna, those colossal creatures that once roamed the earth and were far larger than anything living today. Perhaps the memory of them persisted through generations, evolving into myth.
It's highly probable, yes.
Yeah.
Imagine how a giant ground sloth, or a saber-toothed tiger, or even a woolly mammoth, though long gone, might have been described and redescribed over generations, slowly evolving into fearsome, monstrous beings in the collective memory.
Kind of like a game of telephone over centuries.
Exactly. It's much like the Greek myth of the Cyclops, which some theorize may have arisen from the discovery of elephant skulls, the large nasal cavity looking like a single eye socket. By extension, the discovery of dinosaur or mastodon bones, with their incredible unknown shapes, likely fueled dragon lore, as people struggled desperately to explain these terrible skeletons without any concept of extinction or deep time, using the only frame of reference they had: monsters.
It's quite amazing to think that even in medieval and early modern times, people were already attempting in their own ways to reconstruct animals from the fossils they found, trying to make sense of these ancient puzzles.
Yes, and it highlights this slow progression of scientific understanding. We mentioned that 14th century dragon skull earlier, the one that turned out to be a woolly rhinoceros skull.
Right, in Germany.
What's remarkable is that much later, with advancing knowledge, it was indeed used in an early, much more accurate scientific reconstruction of an extinct rhinoceros, showing how understanding can shift. This contrasts sharply with the centuries preceding it, when people, lacking scientific frameworks, wove wild and imaginative tales around such discoveries, believing them to be real dragons.
Mm-hmm.
So to quietly summarize, these mysterious bones and strange colossal animals, both living and long extinct, provided our ancestors with an abundance of raw material to vividly imagine and truly believe in the existence of what they call dragons.
Let's gently move on, reflecting on how deeply ingrained these creature-like images are in our shared human story. Now, where do we find the oldest actual mentions of them?
Let's begin our historical journey in Mesopotamia, often called one of the cradles of civilization, a place that gives us some of the absolute earliest written records featuring dragon-like creatures, showing just how ancient these symbols truly are in human consciousness.
Okay, Mesopotamia.
That's a wonderful starting point. One of the most significant texts is the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, which dates to around 1100 BC. But its stories are built upon even older traditions that stretch back further into time. It tells the epic tale of the storm god Marduk's powerful battle against the primordial sea serpent goddess Tiamat.
Tiamat, right.
She's depicted as a fearsome chaos monster, and her defeat isn't just a simple victory. It leads directly to the creation of the world as we know it, with the universe being formed from her very body. There are even earlier Sumerian myths that also feature serpentine enemies of the gods, showing a long tradition of these powerful, often malevolent serpent figures.
And it's not just in the written word that we find these ancient dragons. You can see physical evidence, too, visually represented. Take the Mushu, a long, scaly dragon that was depicted so prominently on Babylon's Ishtar Gate, dating from the 6th century BC.
Oh yes, the Ishtar Gate. Beautiful and imposing.
It's an imposing figure, isn't it? A creature of immense significance in their visual culture, a symbol of divine power and protection for the city.
Indeed. Beyond that, literary mentions abound. The Akkadian epic of Gilgamesh, from around 1900 to 1400 BC, features a dragon-like demon named Humbaba guarding the cedar forest, a formidable challenge for the hero.
Humbaba.
And other ancient texts speak of various serpent gods, such as Baushumu and Achungal, all powerful and often dangerous. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you also see these ancient narratives echoing into the biblical Old Testament, specifically in texts post-10th century BC, where Leviathan emerges as a powerful sea dragon symbolizing cosmic chaos.
Like in the book of Job.
Exactly, as dramatically described, for instance, in Job 41 with its fiery breath and impenetrable scales. Even the serpent in Genesis 3, while not a fire-breathing dragon, certainly echoes these much older serpent myths from the region, representing temptation and disorder.
So whether it's Gilgamesh confronting Humbaba, Marduk battling Tiamat, or the biblical references to Leviathan, what we see is that dragons or dragon-like entities were present as potent cosmic forces or formidable monsters, with their roots stretching back thousands of years into human storytelling.
Truly ancient.
Imagine the imposing gates of Babylon, adorned with the fierce Musho, its scales shimmering, or the vast churning waters of Tiamat, symbolizing primordial chaos. It truly paints a powerful picture, doesn't it, of these ancient beliefs?
It really does. Moving across continents, we shift our focus to China, where dragon lore is extraordinarily ancient and deeply ingrained in the culture, almost from its very beginnings. We find Neolithic artifacts dating back as far as the 6th millennium BC that already feature distinct dragon-like motifs, hinting at their early importance.
6th millennium BC, that's incredible.
That's an incredible span of time demonstrating a continuous reverence.
It truly is remarkable. By the time of the Shang dynasty, which was around 1600 to 1046 BC, dragons, known as Long, were already prevalent in their art and even found in oracle bone inscriptions, which were used for divination.
Oracle bones, right.
This really suggests they played a significant and established role in early Chinese beliefs, connected to spiritual matters and forecasts.
One of the earliest written mentions specifically comes from Chung Hua in the 4th century BC, who recorded what was identified as a dragon bone fossil discovery in Sichuan.
Ah, linking back to the fossils again.
Exactly. This suggests that these creatures were thought to be real parts of the natural world, even if their true nature wasn't understood.
And it goes even deeper into their cultural identity and origins. Chinese traditions speak of legendary rulers, figures like Fuxi, Shennong, and the Yellow Emperor, who were said to take dragon form themselves or ride on the backs of dragons. These legends, too, date back millennia, weaving dragons into the very origin stories of their civilization and connecting them to imperial power.
You also find them extensively in early literature. Texts like the Zuozhuan from the 4th to 5th century BC and various poems from those eras describe dragons flying through clouds, controlling rain, and serving as symbols of immense power and natural forces. It really cements their profound place in the ancient Chinese psyche, not just as monsters, but as integral spiritual beings.
Let's briefly turn to ancient Egypt now, a civilization with its own powerful symbols. Here, the serpent Apep, also known as Apophis, appears around 2000 BC.
Yes.
He's depicted as a colossal snake demon, representing the destructive forces of chaos that constantly threaten cosmic order, particularly the sun god Ra's journey across the sky.
Apep is frequently shown in Egyptian art being struck by the sun god Ra's rays, symbolizing the daily victory of cosmic order over disorder, light over darkness, and the sun's triumph over the chaotic underworld. While Apep isn't a winged dragon in the way we might think of a later Western dragon, this underworld serpent perfectly embodies that ancient dragon idea as the personification of evil or fundamental disorder that must be perpetually subdued to maintain balance in the universe.
The constant battle.
A daily one, according to their myths.
Our journey now takes us to Vedic India, a land of ancient spiritual texts. Here, the Rig Veda, the oldest Vedic text from around 1500 to 1200 BC, recounts a very powerful narrative. It tells of the god Indra slaying the multi-headed serpent Butra, who had wickedly imprisoned the world's waters, causing drought and suffering for humanity.
And it's explicitly stated, Vritra is referred to as a dragon, or a serpent demon, symbolizing drought and chaos, and Indra's act of slaying him releases the life-giving waters, bringing prosperity back to the land.
So another chaos-slaying motif.
It's a foundational myth of cosmic order. Later Sanskrit epics, like the Mahabharata and Puranas, further introduce the Naga serpents, some benevolent and wise, often associated with water and treasures, while others are formidable foes. What's fascinating here is how dragons, or Nagas, in Indian mythology are often intricately linked to weather, rivers, and fertility, tying them directly to the lifeblood of the land and human survival.
Returning to China, specifically during the Qin and Han dynasties, from the 3rd century BC onward, dragons were truly established not just in lore but in written history, and became absolutely integral to the national identity and imperial power.
Yes, the legend of the Han founder Liu Bang is a striking example. He was said to have seen a dragon sign when he established his capital, solidifying his mandate to rule. And emperors of these dynasties famously claimed direct descent from dragons, with figures like the Jade Emperor being a notable example, intertwining imperial legitimacy with divine draconic lineage.
Wow, direct descent, that's powerful symbolism.
Immensely so.
Visually, too, you see this prominence throughout the period. Representations from this time, such as the 8-legged dragons found in Han Tomb art, showcase their complex and evolving imagery, moving beyond simple serpentine forms.
And by this time, philosophical works like Zhuangzi were mentioning dragons as spiritual creatures, capable of immense transformations, which really solidify their status as an integral and profound symbol in East Asia by the time of early dynastic history. It's clear they were more than just monsters. They were deeply symbolic representations of spiritual power and the flow of the universe.
Now, let's transition to classical Europe, specifically ancient Greek mythology, which also featured its own formidable serpent dragons. Think of Python, the earth dragon that Apollo famously slew at Delphi to claim his oracle, a powerful act of establishing his divine authority.
And of course, the multi-headed water serpent Hydra, famous for being one of Hercules' most challenging labors. Each head cutoff would regrow, preventing an almost insurmountable challenge.
That regeneration thing is terrifying.
It really is. Hesiod's Theogony, dating to the 8th century BC, further solidifies this, depicting the monstrous Typhon, known as the father of monsters, as a 100-headed dragon or giant who was ultimately slain by Zeus, securing his rule over the cosmos. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the earliest Norse myths from the Viking era also feature Jormungandr, the immense world serpent encircling Midgard, prophesied to battle Thor at Ragnarok, the very end of the world.
The Midgards are in.
Yeah. While precise written records from the Viking Age itself are scarce, sagas compiled around 1000 AD beautifully reflect this older, deep-seated dragon lore.
Let's deepen our exploration of China during the Warring States period, a time of great philosophical and political upheaval. Texts like Zhuangzi from the 3rd century BC and Han Feizi began to incorporate dragons into profound philosophical allegories, moving them beyond just mythical beasts to embody complex ideas.
You also find the legendary story of a rain-bringing dragon, as famously told in the Shiji, the records of the Grand Historian, from the 1st century BC. This shows their enduring connection to nature's power and vital human needs.
And early Confucian and Taoist thinkers truly used dragons symbolically to represent profound concepts. Confucius, for instance, described himself as a fledgling dragon in the mud, signifying his unrecognized potential and ultimate destiny, a powerful metaphor that resonates even today.
It's a beautiful image. Now, for something truly remarkable, let's cross the vast oceans to Mesoamerica, emphasizing something truly striking. Pre-Columbian cultures there developed their own dragon-like deities completely independently, without any known contact with the Old World.
Completely separate. Wow.
Yes, this speaks to a shared human pattern of myth-making.
It's astounding, isn't it? You have the Aztecs, for instance, with their worship of Quetzalcoatl, a revered feathered serpent god associated with wind, learning, and the morning star. Such a profound and multifaceted fit in their cosmology, a bringer of culture.
Similarly, the Maya held great reverence for Kukulkan, also a feathered serpent, a powerful creator deity and bringer of rain, vital for their agricultural societies.
Quetzalcoatls and Kukulkan, feathered serpents.
Exactly. And in the Andes, the Inca had Amaru, a serpent dragon linked to water and the underworld, again highlighting this elemental connection. Native North American tribes, such as the Lakota and Cherokee, also had their own horned snake spirits and unique bird-serpent hybrids, embodying different aspects of nature and spirit.
What's fascinating here is that these serpent monsters are often nature-related, controlling rain or embodying the sun or linked to creation. Archaeological evidence, like the magnificent Kukulkan temples, dates them back at least to 1000 AD or even earlier. This truly demonstrates parallel developments across continents, showcasing how ancient peoples worldwide without contact independently envisioned giant reptilian spirits or gods fulfilling very similar archetypal roles in their societies.
So, after this incredible journey through time and across continents, it's worth pausing to consider how these earliest texts actually describe these creatures. In all these examples, dragons are described variously, as powerful gods or formidable demon serpents of water and storms, like Tiamat in Mesopotamia or Apep in Egypt or Vritra in India, embodying primal forces.
And they also appear as potent symbols, like the Chinese emperor's totems, embodying imperial legitimacy and divine right. Or as cosmic chaos meant to be conquered, such as Zeus battling Typhon or Indra confronting Vritra, representing the triumph of order.
Right.
And even as protectors or powerful forces of nature, like Quetzalcoatl serving as a culture hero and bringer of civilization.
What's fascinating here is that the oldest texts often don't explicitly use the modern English word dragon. That term, as we understand it, is a medieval invention, emerging from Latin and Greek words for serpent.
Ah, so the word itself came later.
Much later, relatively speaking. Instead, they speak of giant snakes or serpents imbued with mythical powers, or other specific names in their own languages.
A great way to see this contrast is that the serpent in the book of Genesis is more of a clever trickster, a tempter, subtle and insidious. Whereas Job 41 explicitly describes Leviathan as a fire-breathing, dragon-like monster, much closer to our modern image of a formidable, physically overwhelming beast.
That's a perfect comparison.
Isn't it fascinating how the language might change, but the powerful image of a giant, awe-inspiring serpent remains a constant across so many cultures and centuries?
So if we gently look back at what we've just explored, from Mesopotamia to the Americas, we can see how truly ancient and universally present these dragon-like beings are.
Yes, from those primordial chaos monsters to symbols of imperial power, these powerful serpentine figures emerged in incredibly diverse forms, reflecting the concerns of their time.
And you mentioned those amazing Babylonian creatures, the Mushaju and the Ishtar Gate, and of course, Marduk's foundational battle with Tiamat, a key chaos monster for world creation.
Then in early China, we have the Long, already appearing on oracle bones, and those legendary rulers embracing the dragon form. So ancient.
Don't forget ancient Egypt's Apep, the chaos serpent, Ra's eternal foe, representing the disorder that Ra battles daily.
And from Vedic India, we learned about Indra slaying Vutra to release the waters, a vital act, and the enduring presence of the Naga serpents, often tied to water and wisdom.
In classical Europe, we met the Greek Python and Hydra, Zeus battling the monstrous Typhon, and that immense Norse Jormungandr, the world serpent, encircling everything.
And across the Americas, the incredible independent development of Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan, those revered feathered serpents, alongside Amaru linked to water in the Andes.
And a quiet reminder on early terminology. The term dragon itself is medieval. Ancient texts actually used words for giant snake or serpent to describe these powerful beings. It wasn't a universal term back then.
Let's consider a core question that naturally arises from our journey so far. Why do dragon-like creatures appear in almost every culture across the globe, even those with no known historical contact with each other? It's a truly remarkable and persistent phenomenon, isn't it?
It really is. And a fundamental reason for this global phenomenon lies in the universal presence of large snakes or other formidable predators in many environments across the world. Whether it was a massive python in a dense jungle, a powerful crocodile in a flowing river, or a large, dangerous cat in the savannah, the shared reality of encountering such threats, regardless of geographic location, led many societies to independently imagine a kind of super serpent, a magnified version of these fears.
And you can see how this independent yet remarkably similar evolution plays out in their imagery and roles. China's long, their iconic dragons, and India's Naga are both deeply rooted in powerful serpent imagery, often benevolent or neutral. Meanwhile, European dragons often lean towards a reptile with a winged bat hybrid, showcasing a slightly different but still distinctly reptilian core, more often malevolent.
What's truly extraordinary is that even in places where direct cultural contact was impossible for millennia, such as Mesoamerica compared to Asia or Europe, people still developed myths of giant reptiles.
Like the feathered serpents.
Exactly. We have those incredible feathered serpents in the Americas, like Quetzalcoatl, distinct yet archetypally similar to the water dragons in Asia. This strongly points to convergent thinking.
Convergent thinking.
Yes, the idea that similar primal fears, whether of devastating storms, unpredictable floods, or powerful predators, naturally lead to remarkably similar mythical figures, even across entirely different continents. You might quietly imagine a world map dotted with these serpent-like creatures emerging from distinct civilizations, like ancient thoughts taking shape, all independent but somehow connected by shared human experience.
Building on that, let's delve into the shared characteristics that bind these diverse dragon-like creatures globally. They are consistently depicted as large, often serpentine, typically covered in scales, and possessing fearsome claws and teeth. It's almost a universal blueprint for a powerful, ancient monster, a shared language of fear.
Indeed. And beyond those physical traits, you often find common elemental associations, such as water or fire, or frequent additions like horns, multiple heads, or even breath weapons. Their typical habitats are also surprisingly consistent across cultures, whether they're living underground in deep caves, at the bottom of lakes, or soaring through the sky.
It reinforces the idea that these recurring traits likely stem from the same fundamental root fears and observations of real-world animals. The slithering danger of snakes, the powerful jaws and scaly hide of crocodiles, and the raw ferocity of big cats. For instance, the imaginative fusion of an eagle's powerful wings with a snake's body creating a flying serpent is a very natural and intuitive leap for the human mind to make when trying to explain something unknown.
It certainly seems so. And it's quite interesting how even if a culture's dragon is predominantly benevolent, as we see often in China, or malevolent, as often in Europe, it frequently retains that core serpentine or lizard-like appearance.
That basic shape persists.
It seems that core shape is what resonates most deeply. One scholar actually noted how universally humans blend scary animal features into a dragon. They even quoted Wang Fu's classic description of a Chinese dragon, which beautifully encapsulates this mashup. Horns of a stag, neck of a snake, scales of a carp, claws of an eagle, paws of a tiger.
Wow, quite the collection of parts.
This powerful act of imaginative synthesis, combining traits from powerful and respected animals, is truly a universal imaginative act across cultures.
Now, while it's clear that many dragon myths arose independently, we also need to acknowledge that some dragon ideas undeniably spread and diffused between cultures, sharing and evolving along the way.
Absolutely, and we have clear examples of this borrowing and influence within East Asia. Korean and Japanese dragons, for instance, are directly descended from older Chinese traditions, their visual styles and symbolic meanings often quite similar. Similarly, many Southeast Asian Naga legends were directly influenced by the spread of Hinduism and Buddhism from India, bringing serpent deities and their lore with them along trade routes.
Conversely, it works the other way too, though often much later. From the 1800s onward, Europeans began to learn about Far Eastern dragons through burgeoning trade and missionary travel. Sometimes they even integrated these new, often benevolent images into their own Western fantasy and art, softening the image of the dragon over time from a purely malevolent beast.
However, it's crucial to emphasize again that many dragon-like myths developed completely independently.
Right, like in Mesoamerica.
Think about those feathered serpents of Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan. They emerged without any known Old World influence whatsoever, a true testament to convergent human thought. African snake spirits, such as the Egyptian apep or the various West African water serpents, also developed in isolation, showing unique regional characteristics. So while trade routes like the Silk Road or periods of conquest like the Crusades could lead to some mixing of mythical details and artistic interpretations, the core idea of a great serpent monster is so fundamental to human psychology that it almost certainly appeared on its own in most parts of the world, a universal reflection of human experience.
And if we broaden our perspective even further, we can see that dragons often embody underlying human themes that transcend specific cultures. They frequently appear when societies grapple with profound questions about the nature of the world, or the very essence of power and control.
You see the pervasive chaos camp motif, for instance, the storm god battling a chaos serpent, is found almost universally, from the Near East to Europe and Asia, reflecting a shared human struggle to bring order to the world and overcome destructive forces.
That struggle seems timeless.
It really does. We also see how serpent gods are associated with bringing life-giving rain in regions like India and parts of Africa, highlighting their direct connection to vital natural forces that sustain life.
And rulers throughout history have often likened themselves to dragons, associating themselves with this immense power. Think of the concept of the mandate of heaven in China, where the emperor was seen as the son of heaven and often erectly represented by the dragon, symbolizing his divine right to rule.
Right, the imperial dragon.
Or the prominent display of dragon imagery. Emperors in East Asia wearing elaborate dragon robes, or the majestic dragon thrones they sat upon, even subtle dragon's eyes woven into Western architecture, like the reference to Solomon's throne. It's a symbol of immense inherent power and authority.
So, whether through direct cultural exchange or through the powerful commonalities of human psychology and shared experiences of nature, dragon-like figures surface nearly everywhere. And what's truly remarkable is that they share many features: a serpentine form, elemental power, colossal size, precisely because these ideas resonate so universally with the human condition and our collective attempts to understand the world around us. It's a shared story, really, told in countless different ways.
As we continue our quiet exploration, it's lovely to think about how these widespread beliefs show a deep thread of connection across all of humanity. Let's explore what these creatures actually represented in ancient times. What did they mean to people?
Let's explore one of the most fundamental ancient representations of dragons. As embodiments of the wild, untamed, and often unpredictable forces of nature that humans strove to understand, and sometimes even to control or appease.
Nature's raw power.
Precisely. Think about how sea serpents and storm dragons specifically symbolized immense dangers like devastating floods, severe storms, or the boundless, perilous power of the ocean itself. In Babylonian mythology, Tiamat, that formidable dragon goddess we discussed, literally represented the chaotic salt sea and primeval disorder, the raw, undifferentiated state of the world before creation. Her defeat by the god Marduk wasn't just a battle. It symbolized the triumph of order over chaos and the very creation of the structured world from that primordial mess.
You can draw clear parallels to the Bible's Leviathan, described as a sea monster of immense power, or Norse mythology's Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent that encircles the world. Both stand for cosmic chaos, forces that gods or heroes must confront and tame to establish order in the universe and allow civilization to flourish.
They represent that untamable aspect.
Yeah, it's not always about outright destruction and chaos from these creatures, is it?
That's a key distinction indeed. In China and Japan, dragons, while immensely powerful, often controlled water, the flow of rivers, the bringing of life-giving rain, and were seen not as inherently evil, but as mighty, often benevolent natural spirits.
More like forces to be respected.
Exactly. Killing or placating these dragons provided ancient explanations for natural events like plentiful rain, devastating drought, or even mysterious eclipses. They were part of the natural balance, sometimes requiring respect or appeasement, not just a force of pure evil to be vanquished.
Beyond their connection to nature, dragons also served as incredibly potent symbols of rulers and social order, representing authority and legitimacy in ancient times. It's another significant way they were deeply woven into society.
This is particularly true in China, where the dragon was overwhelmingly auspicious and inextricably linked to the emperor himself. Chinese emperors proudly claimed the dragon as their personal emblem, a divine symbol, and the Son of Heaven was often quite literally referred to as a dragon, embodying its power and wisdom.
The Son of Heaven as a dragon.
Yes, you see it everywhere in the imperial imagery. The elaborate dragon robes worn by emperors, the majestic dragon thrones they sat upon, and even the significance of the year of the dragon and the zodiac, all of these unequivocally showcase dragons as profound symbols of imperial power and legitimacy.
And it wasn't just China. Some Celtic kings and Welsh rulers also adopted dragon standards. Think of the famous Welsh red dragon on their flag today. It's a powerful political symbol of their royal lineage and authority, stretching back centuries.
The Pendragon connection, perhaps?
Dragons could truly serve as badges of unity and power, as seen in Britain's Arthurian legend, where two battling dragons symbolize the native Britons against invading Saxons, representing their struggle.
It's a fascinating cultural divergence when we discuss how dragons were perceived as forces of profound good or as agents of pure evil. In China and East Asia, as we touched on, dragons were overwhelmingly positive.
Yes, their role as bringers of rain was absolutely vital, directly translating to good harvests and agricultural prosperity. They were symbols of luck, wisdom, longevity, and even protection. Villages traditionally held elaborate dragon dances, specifically to ensure that beneficial rain would come, honoring these powerful water spirits.
And we also briefly reiterated that in Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl was revered as a creator god and culture hero, a bringer of knowledge, not a dragon to be slain by a hero or perceived as evil.
But if you contrast this sharply with Europe and the Middle East, dragons were far more frequently portrayed as villains.
Oh, definitely.
We have the famous examples of St. George's dragon or Beowulf's dragon, depicted as greedy, destructive beasts, hoarding treasure, and often demanding human sacrifices from villages.
What's more, in Christian symbolism, dragons became potent metaphors for Satan or sin, representing evil and corruption, with the most famous example being the red dragon in the book of Revelation, explicitly identifies Satan himself.
Right, the ultimate evil.
This stark difference highlights how a dragon could mean cosmic evil in one place and cosmic good in another, based entirely on the prevailing cultural and religious lens.
A very common thread running through many dragon myths, regardless of their specific cultural origin, is the narrative of bringing order out of chaos. Heroes and gods who slay dragons often symbolize the establishment of justice, the foundation of civilization, or the beginning of a new, more stable era, a turning point for humanity.
Exactly. Marduk's killing of Tiamat, for example, doesn't just create the world. It signifies the creation of a structured world, an ordered cosmos out of primordial chaos, allowing life to flourish. Similarly, Indra's slaying of Vritra unlocks vital water and fertility, bringing life and sustenance to the land. A medieval dragon slayer, such as St. George, frequently saves a kingdom or a princess from ruin, serving as a powerful allegory for conquering the forces of chaos and disorder that threaten society and its foundations.
So, in many of these narratives, dragons often stand for the out-of-control aspects of the world. The wild, untamed, destructive forces and their defeat represents civilization's triumph over them, a step towards human progress.
Right. Taming the wilderness, in a sense.
And in many patriarchal societies, a dragon is often depicted guarding some form of treasure, symbolizing not just wealth, but hidden wisdom or immense power, and heroes claiming that treasure also claim kingship or divine blessings, solidifying their right to rule.
To conclude this section, it's important to consider how dragons could also be intimately linked to a people's own identity or their collective aspirations, becoming deeply personal symbols. The Welsh, for instance, adopted the red dragon as a powerful national symbol, embodying their pride and independence, a visual statement of who they are.
In ancient Egypt, pharaohs used the cobra, which is a type of powerful serpent or dragon figure, as a symbol of divine protection, often seen prominently on their crowns as a royal emblem guarding the pharaoh and the realm.
And dragons could also serve as a test of a hero's or a society's faith. A saint slaying a dragon often reinforced deeply held religious values and demonstrated the triumph of good over evil, or faith over doubt, providing a moral lesson for the community.
Proving their worthiness.
Exactly. In each case, dragons represented bigger themes, whether it was nature's immense might, the concept of rightful rule, or core communal values, depending entirely on what a society held most dear. It's interesting to think how a single creature could embody such different hopes and fears across the world, isn't it? A reflection of the human condition.
It really is quite profound.
So as we softly recap this part of our journey, we can truly appreciate how the dragon, from primordial chaos to symbols of majestic power, mirrors the deepest concerns and aspirations of ancient societies. They were not just monsters, but mirrors of cultural values.
Exactly. Whether feared or revered, dragons provided a powerful lens through which ancient peoples understood their world, validated their leaders, and even conceptualized their gods.
We saw how chaos and nature were often embodied by dragons like Tiamat in Babylon, Leviathan in the Bible, and Jörmungandr in Norse mythology, representing cosmic disorder, though Chinese and Japanese dragons could also benevolently control rain.
For power and authority, the Chinese emperors famously adopted the dragon as their emblem, representing the son of heaven, and the Welsh red dragon stands as a proud national symbol even today, a direct line to power.
Then there's that clear split in good versus evil. East Asia saw them as often benevolent, bringing luck, while Europe and the Middle East typically cast them as villainous, symbolizing sin and even Satan.
The order versus chaos theme is so strong in Dragon Slayer myths, with figures like Marduk, Indra, and St. George symbolizing civilization's triumph over primal disorder, the hero's journey.
And finally, dragons could represent ancestry and values, like defining Welsh identity or serving as a test for heroes and reinforcing deeply held religious faith. A complex symbol indeed.
Let's now explore one of the most striking differences in dragon lore: their physical appearance between Eastern and Western cultures. It's quite a visual contrast when you picture them side by side, almost like two entirely different creatures sharing a name.
It really is a fascinating divergence. Let's begin by describing Western dragons as they typically evolved by the European Middle Ages. You'd imagine them as immense, heavily scaled reptiles with 4 sturdy legs, distinctive leathery bat-like wings that allowed them to soar, and crucially, the terrifying ability to breathe fire, often depicted as plumes of flame.
The classic European dragon image.
Precisely. They were frequently portrayed guarding vast hordes of gold or captive princesses, embodying greed, destruction, and a formidable physical threat.
In sharp contrast, envision Eastern dragons from places like China, Japan, and Korea. They are traditionally long, graceful, and distinctly serpentine creatures, much more snake-like.
Very much so. Notably, they typically have no wings, yet they possess clawed feet and are often adorned with elegant deer antlers or flowing lion-like manes, giving them a very dignified, almost regal and ethereal appearance.
And their breath.
Crucially, Eastern dragons breathe wind or water, not fire, which perfectly aligns with their distinctly benevolent, wise, and auspicious character. They're often associated with clouds, rain, and water sources. It's important to note that Japanese and Korean dragons largely descended directly from the Chinese model, retaining very similar features, though Japanese myths do include some unique variations, like the flying 8-headed Yamata no Oroki, which has a more monstrous multi-headed form.
Oh, okay. Some variations exist then.
Yes, but the core image is quite distinct. You can almost see 2 distinct dragon images side by side. One a formidable, heavy, winged beast, the other a long, flowing, majestic serpent, light and powerful, yet without visible means of flight.
So how did these two incredibly distinct visual styles come to be so different? It appears they largely evolved along very separate trajectories, didn't they, responding to different cultural needs and local observations?
They absolutely did. In West Asia and Europe, artists merged existing local snake myths, which were often associated with danger in the underworld, with the fire-breathing dragons from Greek mythology, figures like Typhon and Python. They then integrated ideas from Mesopotamian or biblical sources where serpents were often malevolent. Over time, medieval bestiaries, which were encyclopedias of real and mythical animals, then solidified that iconic image of a winged, often grotesque, fire-blowing lizard, a creature of pure dread.
And in East Asia, the earliest dragon art was already predominantly serpentine, long before any significant cultural exchange.
That's right.
This form fit naturally into their Confucian and Taoist cosmology, with its profound 5 elements and 4 animal symbolism, like the azure dragon of the East being associated with a specific direction, season, and elemental power.
What's really telling is that Chinese artists never found a need for wings on their dragons to explain their flight. Their dragons could effortlessly fly through sheer magic and spiritual power, symbolizing their ethereal nature and profound connection to the heavens and waters, not a physical flight mechanism like a bird or bat.
So flight wasn't a physical thing for them.
Yeah.
More magical.
Exactly. So while the Silk Road and other trade routes certainly facilitated some exchange of stories and goods between East and West, the fundamental visual styles of their dragons remain strikingly distinct, rooted in their unique cultural foundations.
It's also worth acknowledging that there was some limited borrowing and cross-influence, even if the core designs remained separate. Ideas, after all, do travel.
There was, for sure. For example, Buddhism brought Indian Nida serpent ideas into China, which further reinforced the snake-like appearance of Chinese dragons, strengthening that core serpentine form. Then, during the Mongol Empire and later, Chinese imagery, particularly their exquisite dragon robes and porcelain, significantly influenced Korea and Japan, spreading that aesthetic and symbolic weight.
Conversely, medieval Europeans eventually learned of Asian dragons through accounts like Marco Polo's travels, though his descriptions sometimes varied from the specific visual traditions.
Right. But fundamentally, the Western dragon design emerged from combining snake and bird and later bat elements, creating a formidable physical presence. Whereas the Eastern dragon design remained rooted in snake plus water symbolism, emphasizing grace and spiritual power.
Different building blocks,
A
essentially.
European artist might instinctively add wings to a large lizard to convey flight and menace, while a Chinese artist saw the dragon as a powerful water spirit that required no such physical appendages to soar or command the elements, operating on a different plane.
And these distinct design choices deeply reflect the cultural views and roles assigned to dragons, don't they? Their appearance truly tells you something profound about their purpose in the myth and their relationship with humanity.
That's a profound point. Chinese dragons, with their wingless, long, flowing bodies, perfectly fit the idea of a river or storm spirit gracefully gliding through clouds, bringing life-giving rain, embodying a gentle yet powerful force of nature.
In contrast, Western dragons, with their massive, often bulky bodies and powerful bat-like wings, were perfectly suited for the image of a fearsome, fire-breathing beast that needed to be bravely confronted and slain in battle. They were the ultimate physical challenge, often a symbol of untamed wilderness or evil.
Over time, these images became iconic, instantly recognizable as either a Chinese dragon or a European dragon to anyone familiar with the lore.
Yeah, you know which is which immediately.
Even today, this east-west dragon split persists vividly in fantasy literature and media, with wise, often friendly Asian dragons contrasted against evil, demonic dragons from medieval European tales.
Isn't it wonderful how art and belief systems intertwine to create such enduring visual legacies, shaping our imagination for centuries?
It truly is.
So you can see how different cultural visions quietly shape these magnificent creatures, giving them such distinct forms. Now, about that fire, let's delve into one of the most iconic, yet physically impossible, characteristics of many dragons: their ability to breathe fire. It's a truly captivating and terrifying aspect of their myth, something that sets them apart.
Indeed. In ancient myths, fire was often a powerful symbol of danger, destruction, or even purification. The dragon's fire might not always have been intended as literal flame by all cultures. Sometimes it simply signified that the dragon was immensely dangerous, its presence akin to a raging furnace or a destructive volcano.
So more symbolic sometimes.
It could be. It was a potent visual metaphor for their inherent destructive power.
And when you think about the environments many ancient cultures inhabited, it makes perfect sense. Many lived near active volcanoes or frequently witnessed the terrifying spectacle of lightning during storms, which could ignite devastating wildfires. So it was quite natural for dragons, as embodiments of powerful, uncontrollable forces, to become inextricably linked to fiery imagery, as if they were the living source of these natural catastrophes.
Absolutely. Concrete examples truly help paint this picture. The smoking mountains of volcanic eruptions or the perpetual burning of natural gas vents, like the eternal flames of Mount Camara in Turkey.
Eternal flames.
Yes, natural gas seeps that burn continuously. These could easily inspire the idea of a fire-breathing monster, a creature that somehow channels this raw, geological power from the very earth itself. Similarly, the sound of thunder coupled with the flash of lightning, especially in a dark, stormy sky, might have been narrated as a dragon's mighty roar and its searing flame across the sky, bringing destruction from above.
And it makes intuitive sense that early humans would attribute the devastation of these natural phenomena mountains that smoke and ash, or vast wildfires ignited by lightning, to a dragon's destructive handiwork. It's a way of explaining the inexplicable, giving a fearsome agency to natural forces beyond their control.
This is where theories connect geology and myth quite directly. Some scholars suggest that legends of powerful deities battling monstrous figures, like Zeus versus Typhon in Greek mythology, or Marduk versus Tiamat in Babylonian lore, might have been directly inspired by the dramatic events of erupting volcanoes. Typhon, for instance, was often trapped beneath volcanoes, his rage causing their fiery outbursts, literally embodying the volcanic threat.
So the myth explained the volcano.
Potentially, yes. Even in medieval times, scribes, seeking to rationalize unexplained natural flames, might have attempted to interpret them as direct evidence of dragon fire, reinforcing the literal belief.
Of course, we know no animal truly breathes fire in the literal sense today, but it's fascinating to consider if any real creatures possess frightening defensive sprays that could have fueled this myth, perhaps providing a tiny kernel of biological inspiration.
They do, though it's certainly not fire in the literal sense. Take the bombardier beetle, a tiny insect, but it's famously capable of shooting a boiling hot chemical spray at its enemies, delivering quite a shock.
The bombardier beetle, I've heard of that.
It's often cited as the closest natural equivalent we have to fire breath, providing a real-world, albeit miniature, analogy for scorching defense. And then there are certain venomous snakes that can spit venom, causing a burning sensation if it gets into the eyes. While certainly not fire, these biological capabilities demonstrate that nature itself can inspire the idea of a creature with a scorching, weaponized defense, and the dragon myth may have simply magnified these real-world effects into something supernatural and truly awe-inspiring, a fearsome weapon.
And exploring more speculative theories, some have wondered if fire breath might have been a metaphor for something else entirely, perhaps poison or corrosive substances, giving a different kind of internal destructive power to the dragon.
It's an interesting thought, suggesting a hidden, deadly quality. Some scholars have hypothesized, though without direct evidence for true acid-spitting reptiles in the fossil record, that stories of extinct reptiles might have been exaggerated to include the ability to spit acid or powerful venom from their mouths.
So maybe acid breath instead of fire breath?
Possibly, or at least a venom so potent it felt like burning. We know many dragon stories describe their bite or blood as deadly or corrosive, reinforcing the idea of a toxic internal weapon. Recall Beowulf's dragon, whose very blood was toxic, killing the hero when it touched his skin. This certainly lends credence to the idea of a potent internal destructive power, even if not literal flame.
There's even a more speculative theory related to human technology. In medieval times, people would have encountered substances like Greek fire, that mysterious incendiary weapon used in naval warfare.
Greek fire, yeah. Nasty stuff.
Or observed the earliest rudimentary guns and cannons, which were loud, smoky, and delivered fiery bursts.
Yes, the idea here is that legends could have intertwined these new, powerful, and fiery technologies with existing dragon myths. For instance, if a dragon-guarded fortress suddenly erupted in fire from some newly developed weapon, later storytellers, seeking to explain the incredible event, might have remembered it as the dragon itself breathing fire, incorporating this new observation into the ancient myth.
That's kind of a reach, but interesting.
While certainly speculative, it offers another lens through which the motif of fire breath could have been reinforced and solidified in the popular imagination, adding a contemporary element to ancient fears.
Ultimately, though, it's clear that in literature and myth, across many cultures, dragons are very often depicted as literally breathing fire. The Bible and the Wisdom of Solomon, for example, speaks of God creating fiery flying serpents.
And Norse lore's Jörmungandr, that colossal world serpent, was explicitly said to belch flames, not just symbolically. By the Christian era, and particularly in medieval stories and bestiaries, fire breathing had become an almost standard defining characteristic for what was considered a true dragon, setting them apart as uniquely terrifying.
So it became just part of the package deal for a dragon.
Pretty much. What might have started as a powerful symbolism of their deadly, destructive power eventually became a literal, defining trait in countless stories, making dragons uniquely terrifying and unforgettable in the world of myth, an ultimate expression of their primal power.
From smoking mountains to the smallest beetle, we've seen how fire breath, one of the dragon's most defining traits, emerged from a fascinating mix of natural observation, powerful symbolism, and ancient storytelling.
Indeed, it's a testament to the human mind's ability to take real-world phenomena and transform them into something truly fantastical and enduringly terrifying, something we still imagine today.
So, as a soft memory aid for this chapter, think of these aspects of fire breathing. First, the powerful symbolism of fire, representing danger, purification, and uncontrolled power, inspired by natural forces like volcanoes and lightning.
Then, the direct natural inspiration, where volcanic eruptions, wildfires, and lightning strikes were quite literally seen as a dragon's destructive work. People needed an explanation.
And in terms of real animal analogies, we have the bombardier beetle's hot spray and venomous snake's burning venom, offering a glimpse of how nature might inspire such a myth. Little sparks of reality.
There are also those toxic or acidic theories, suggesting fire breath could have been a metaphor for poison or corrosive substances, an internal weapon. a different kind of burning.
And finally, it's deeply rooted in literary tradition, as ancient texts like the Bible and Norse sagas literally describe fire-breathing dragons, solidifying the image in our collective minds. It just became the standard.
Let's now explore one of the most enduring and widespread narrative patterns across cultures. The Dragon Slayer story. It's a motif that pops up almost everywhere you look, a testament to its universal resonance.
The hero versus the beast, a classic.
It truly is remarkably pervasive. This theme, where a hero or a god confronts and ultimately defeats a dragon or a mighty serpent, is so common across different civilizations because it powerfully dramatizes the timeless struggle between good versus evil, or more broadly, order versus chaos. It's a fundamental human narrative, a story we seem compelled to tell ourselves over and over.
And we can see this theme playing out in various ways across different civilizations, from the very earliest written accounts. Back in Mesopotamia and Babylon, for instance, we recall the creation myth where the god Marduk slays the primordial sea dragon Tiamat. This act isn't just a battle, it literally creates the ordered world from chaos, establishing the very structure of the cosmos.
And moving to India, the god Indra famously kills the serpent demon Vutra to release the world's waters, bringing life and prosperity, and often securing his sovereignty in the process, showing his divine power and beneficence. There's also the story of Krishna's defeat of the giant serpent Kalia in the Yamuna River, symbolizing the triumph over poison and pollution, restoring purity to the vital waters.
In ancient Greece and Rome, this pattern is clear too, woven deeply into their foundational myths. Zeus defeats the dragon-like giant Typhon to secure his rule over the cosmos, much like Marduk, and Apollo claims his oracle at Delphi by killing the python serpent, a very direct act of conquering a monstrous force to establish a sacred space.
And of course, Hercules, or Heracles, slaying the multi-headed Hydra is one of his most iconic 12 labors, a constant struggle against a regenerating, chaotic threat that embodies the seemingly endless nature of evil, requiring ingenuity as well as strength.
Over in Norse and Germanic lore, the pattern continues vividly, with tales of immense courage. Sigurd, or Siegfried, famously slays the dragon Fafnir and acquires a cursed hoard, a central tale in the Volsunga saga that resonates with heroic sacrifice and the complex nature of fate.
And then there's the Old English epic hero Beowulf, who sacrifices his life to battle a fire-breathing dragon, protecting his people to his dying breath, a poignant act of selfless heroism.
A tragic hero.
Very much so. And the mighty Thor himself is destined to battle the Midgard serpent Jörmungandr at Ragnarok, the very end of the world. It's the ultimate cosmic confrontation, a battle that defines the end of an age.
This pattern deeply permeates Christianity and medieval Europe as well, giving rise to some of its most enduring legends. Introduced the beloved legendary hagiographic tale of St. George slaying a dragon, which became widely popular between the 11th and 13th centuries, inspiring countless artworks and stories across Europe.
St. George of the Dragon, yes.
A staple.
And even more fundamentally, in the biblical book of Revelation, Archangel Michael defeats the red dragon, which is explicitly identified as Satan in heaven. These stories transform saints or angels into divine dragon slayers, powerfully reinforcing the triumph of faith over sin and righteousness over evil. It became a powerful allegory for moral and spiritual victory.
And it truly extends beyond these major traditions, reaching into diverse global examples. You have Polish folklore's Walbragen, a fearsome creature terrorizing Krakow. Filipino bacchanal stories involve a hero fighting a moon-eating dragon, an explanation for eclipses. Chinese tales of Neza defeating a powerful river dragon, and countless similar themes found in African and Pacific island legends, where heroes confront powerful, often reptilian, threats that embody their own cultural fears and challenges.
It's truly everywhere.
It seems that no matter where you look, humanity has faced its own dragon and found a hero to conquer it, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and the consistency of this motif is striking. Let's delve into the profound cultural significance behind defeating a dragon. It consistently symbolizes heroism, the establishment of rightful rule, or the triumph of civilization over raw chaos, a narrative that underpins countless societies.
So a king or a hero who successfully kills a dragon often then claims power or saves a kingdom, solidifying their legitimacy and proving their worthiness to lead. You can draw clear parallels to legendary acts like King Arthur pulling Excalibur from the stone to prove his kingship, or St. George rescuing a princess in a town from destruction, becoming a revered patron saint. The dragon's defeat is a clear sign of their inherent strength and right to lead.
And in religious narratives, the act of a god or a saint slaying a dragon serves as undeniable proof of divine favor, demonstrating that they are supported by the cosmic order itself. For example, Marduk, or Indra killing a dragon, not only brings physical benefits like the creation of the cosmos or releasing rain, but also unequivocally confirms their leadership and supremacy among the gods, cementing their divine authority.
In the context of Christian kingship, legends like those of St. George or St. Michael defeating dragons serve to affirm the moral authority of the ruler or the church. It was a powerful way to showcase Christian virtue, conquering chaos and demonic forces, establishing a divine mandate for earthly power, and a moral framework for society.
Beyond the societal and religious, there's a deeper psychological function to the Dragon Slayer motif. It teaches us that immense courage and personal sacrifice can ultimately overcome even the most formidable fears, whether those are external threats that loom over a community or internal struggles that reside within an individual.
Reflect on Beowulf's final fight. He ends the dragon's reign of terror on the Geats, saving his people from further destruction, albeit at the cost of his own life. It's a powerful lesson in self-sacrifice for the greater good, a heroic ideal.
And think about Sigurd. He doesn't just slay Fafnir. He gains profound knowledge afterward, even understanding the language of birds, symbolizing a deeper understanding of the world and the wisdom that can come from confronting one's challenges.
Gaining something beyond just treasure.
Exactly. Killing the dragon frequently means restoring balance to the world, rescuing victims, lifting a curse, or even bringing fertility, as many dragon hordes were metaphorically associated with seed treasures, vital for life and prosperity.
And if we look at the structure of these stories, there are often common recurring elements, aren't there? Almost like a formula for heroism.
Absolutely. They typically feature a grand showdown, often involving a magical weapon, sometimes with aid from a divine ally, and almost always a significant reward, a princess, immense treasure, or a kingdom to rule.
The classic quest structure.
Yes. There's often the presence of riddles or prophecies in some myth, such as the Greek myth where Cadmus must slay a serpent to found the city of Thebes, fulfilling an ancient decree. Reiterate that the widespread chaos camp motif, featuring a storm god battling a chaos serpent, underpins much of this global pattern, a primal narrative of order emerging from disorder. In conclusion, Dragon Slayer myths provide a powerful dramatic stage for societies to articulate and reinforce their core values. Bravery in the face of the unknown, the pursuit of justice, and unwavering faith. The dragon, in these tales, stands as the ultimate menace, often supernatural, and its slaying becomes a crucial rite of passage for the hero or a pivotal cosmic act shaping civilizations.
It's comforting, perhaps, to know that even in ancient times, the human spirit found ways to tell stories of overcoming great challenges, of finding order in chaos. Now, let's shift our lens slightly.
Let's now shift our lens from history and mythology to the realm of human psychology, exploring what dragons represent within our minds, beyond just their mythical stories and historical contexts. They seem to tap into something deeper within us.
Okay, the psychological angle.
Psychologists observe that dragons uniquely unite many primal human fears into a single terrifying creature. They are, in essence, everything scary at once, combining the slithering danger of snakes, the predatory ferocity of big cats, the looming threat of large birds, the unknown terrors of darkness, and the destructive power of fire. It's a concentrated symbol of dread, a primal, universal nightmare.
This leads us to one influential Jungian interpretation. The dragon often embodies what Carl Jung called the shadow archetype, representing the unknown, unintegrated, or even repressed aspects of the individual psyche. The shadow, like the dark side.
In a way, yes. It's like the parts of ourselves we don't want to look at, the fears or desires we keep hidden. They can manifest as a powerful, formidable presence. And since dragons appear in so many separate cultures independently, Carl Jung actually proposed that they symbolize something deeper. A part of the collective unconscious itself, a shared pool of human experience and imagery that transcends individual cultures and historical periods.
Wow, the collective unconscious.
In our dreams, a dragon might manifest as a major problem, or a deep-seated fear that we need to confront in our waking lives. A powerful message from our inner world urging us towards a necessary confrontation or transformation.
So expanding on that, Jungian thinkers often view dragons as symbols of aspects of the self that have not yet been acknowledged or integrated into one's conscious personality, parts of us waiting to be recognized and understood.
Exactly. Slaying a dragon in myth can beautifully mirror the internal process of confronting one's inner demons or significant personal challenges. Referencing an analysis, the dragon might be seen as the personification of chaotic material within oneself, something that must be overcome for the process of individuation becoming a complete, integrated self.
Individuation, becoming whole.
Simply put, for many psychologists, The dragon is akin to an inner beast. The act of conquering it signifies profound personal growth and transformation, a mastery over one's own internal landscape and bringing all parts of the self into harmony. Jung himself famously experienced hearing a patient describe a golden serpent leaving her body, and he connected this image to universal symbols like the Ouroboros, the tail-eating serpent, or the mandala, suggesting that such powerful images frequently emerge from the unconscious mind as a means of self-expression and healing, guiding us.
This connection to the subconscious gets even more intriguing when you consider observations that people in trance states or those using certain psychedelics sometimes report vivid dragon or serpent visions, as if these figures are emerging from the very depths of the mind.
Yes, anthropologist Jeremy Narby, for example, makes the compelling argument that shamans worldwide, during their vision quest, describe seeing intricate, serpentine, DNA-like patterns connecting these ancient visions to fundamental biological structures within all living things, a kind of primal universal knowledge.
DNA patterns as serpents. That's
Odd.
wild. It's a fascinating theory. Even in literature, you find subtle nods to this. Think of Alice in Wonderland's Queen of Hearts interacting with a fanged little blue caterpillar, a whimsical, humble dragon in its own way. Small, but unsettling.
Ha! Yeah, the caterpillar.
While we don't have direct citations for all contexts here, the idea is that dragons often appear in visions and dreams as archetypal figures, powerful messages from the unconscious. A dragon appearing in a dream could be interpreted as a signal that you need to face a particular fear, or it might even be a harbinger of significant transformation in your life, urging you towards growth and change.
That leads to another fascinating psychological angle. Dragons as a kind of storytelling defense mechanism, a way for our minds to process threat.
That's a compelling point from a cognitive science perspective. When ancient peoples encountered ambiguous evidence of a potential threat like mysterious fossils or unknown, imposing animals, their brains instinctively wove these observations into familiar, scary stories. This was a survival strategy.
Giving the unknown a scary face.
Exactly. In cognitive science terms, a dragon might be seen as the result of a hyperactive agent detection device at work within the human mind. We are so strongly predisposed to attribute intent and danger to ambiguous stimuli that our minds can construct an entire dragon narrative around something as simple as a rustling bush or a strange shape in the distance, filling in the blanks with the most threatening possibility. Our memory and imagination in this process seem to latch onto all available fear-inducing details and synthesize them into one cohesive, terrifying monster myth, making the unknown slightly more comprehensible, even if terrifying.
Interestingly, and perhaps surprisingly, some psychologists also point out that dragons aren't solely symbols of fear. They can also represent wisdom or even guidance, taking on a more benevolent aspect.
Yes. In Jungian metaphor, a dragon or a serpent might guard a treasure, which often symbolizes not just gold, but hidden knowledge or profound insights, deep truths. Slaying this dragon, or in some interpretations befriending it, can be seen as integrating difficult or challenging knowledge into one's conscious understanding, a step towards enlightenment and a richer self.
So gaining wisdom by facing the dragon.
That's one way to look at it. Point out that in much modern fantasy, there's a growing trend to portray wise ancient dragons who serve as mentors or allies, teaching heroes and imparting profound truths, showing this evolved understanding.
Like in some kids' stories now.
Exactly. However, historically, the dragon archetype is more often the formidable hurdle or formidable inner challenge that the psyche or the hero must inevitably confront and overcome, even if wisdom is a potential byproduct of that struggle, a reward for bravery.
In essence, many psychological interpretations view dragons as the tangible form given to human fears, a kind of universal symbol of our own wild side, or the unknown within us, both external and internal.
They manifest in our minds whenever human imagination grapples with the unknown, the mysterious, or the repressed aspects of existence, giving form to our deepest thoughts. While science clearly tells us that dragons are not real animals in the physical world, psychologically they are profoundly real, as powerful images within our minds, our dreams, and our collective myths, constantly representing danger, the potential for transformative change, or deep inner challenges that call for courage and self-discovery.
Psychologically real. That's a powerful idea.
It's truly remarkable how the dragon, though mythical, holds such a deep and persistent presence in our inner worlds. They are not just stories, but reflections of our deepest fears and the potential for our greatest growth.
The idea that these creatures could be a map to our own subconscious or a mirror for what we need to overcome gives them a whole new layer of meaning, doesn't it? A quiet journey of self-discovery.
So as we softly summarize this fascinating section, Remember that dragons are a composite fear, combining primal fears, like snakes, cats, fire, and darkness, into one powerful super symbol. All the scary stuff rolled into one.
Then, as a Jungian archetype, they embody the shadow of the unintegrated self, or represent elements of the collective unconscious, a shared human experience, deep psychological stuff.
In dreams and visions, dragons appear in altered states, often signaling inner challenges or profound transformation, a message from within. Listen to your dreams, perhaps.
From a myth-making mechanism perspective, they're the result of hyperactive agent detection, where our minds give form to perceived threats, making sense of the unknown, our brains trying to protect us.
And finally, beyond fear. Remember that dragons can also symbolize wisdom, hidden knowledge, or even serve as guides in personal growth, showing their complex nature. Not always the villain.
So after exploring their origins and meanings, let's now consider why, despite scientific enlightenment and a clear understanding that they aren't real, dragons never truly vanished from our collective consciousness. They seem to have a staying power that transcends mere belief.
It's a fascinating evolution, truly. In medieval times, people genuinely feared dragons, believing they were real lurking creatures, a very tangible threat, even as early skeptics began to emerge in more learned circles. But by the Renaissance and Enlightenment, the belief in real, living dragons gradually faded from scientific consensus. Church scholars increasingly dismissed them as mere superstition, a remnant of a less enlightened age, yet their image persisted.
However, the idea of dragons proved far more resilient than physical belief, persisting vibrantly in art and folklore. Instead of serving primarily as cautionary tales about unexplored seas or delivering rigid moral lessons, dragons transform into compelling characters for pure entertainment and grand narratives.
They move from threat to story.
Right. The ongoing collection and dissemination of classical mythology and local legends played a crucial role in keeping them alive. Medieval bestiaries and grand tapestries continued to feature dragons prominently. Poets wove tales about them, and they were even central to royal pageantry, such as the dragon standard associated with the prestigious Order of the Garter, a powerful visual emblem.
The 20th century marked a pivotal shift, truly transforming dragons into objects of pure fantasy and adventure, setting the stage for the dramatic modern resurgence in a completely new light.
Yes, J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, published in 1937, famously reintroduced a powerful and villainous dragon, Smaug, to a wide popular audience.
Smaug, a classic fantasy dragon.
This character became incredibly influential, inspiring countless other fantasy authors to incorporate dragons into their own imaginative worlds, often as central figures.
And the trend continued to grow. Other influential authors like C.S. Lewis, with his noble and wise dragons, and Ursula K. Le Guin, with her intricate and philosophical dragon lore, and later expansive series like Dragonlance and Harry Potter, kept dragons central to their imaginative worlds, ensuring their continuous presence in popular culture.
They became staples of the fantasy genre?
Absolutely. In contemporary films and games, dragons are truly ubiquitous. They star in animated hits like How to Train Your Dragon. Epic fantasies such as Dragonheart are central to the narratives of Game of Thrones.
Daenerys' dragons, yeah.
With Daenerys dragons directly drawing from classic Western fire-breathing lore and feature prominently in the Hobbit films, bringing Smaug to life on screen in incredible detail. Video and tabletop games, from the iconic Dungeons & Dragons to massive open-world games like Skyrim, and even beloved creature-collecting games like Pokemon, use dragons constantly, making them central to the player experience.
They're everywhere in games.
This continuous presence ensures that new generations encounter dragons as exciting, captivating, mythical creatures, not just relics of a forgotten past.
Beyond entertainment, dragons have become incredibly powerful and versatile symbols in modern society, permeating almost every aspect of our culture, from branding to national identity.
They appear everywhere, from company logos like the Ferrari horse, sometimes colloquially mistaken for a dragon, or the unmistakable Welsh dragon on flags and stamps, a powerful symbol of national pride and heritage.
That Welsh dragon is iconic.
It really is. They truly permeate pop culture. Sports teams, such as the Welsh rugby team, proudly call themselves the Dragons, embodying strength, ferocity, and a strong identity. In China, the dragon symbol is omnipresent, adorning everything from vibrant New Year decorations to everyday phone covers, universally regarded as a symbol of luck, prosperity, and imperial heritage.
Still hugely important there.
Immensely. Even tattoo enthusiasts choose dragon designs to symbolize strength, wisdom, or protection. Online, dragon usernames and avatars are common. In essence, dragons have become highly brandable images, representing boldness, power, or cultural heritage, making them incredibly adaptable icons for modern uses. You can quietly imagine the vibrant red dragon on the Welsh flag, proudly waving on a hillside, a testament to their enduring power.
So, why do people continue to be so captivated by dragons today? Part of their enduring appeal is simply that they are inherently cool, captivating to the eye and the imagination.
That's undeniable, a powerful draw. The idea of a creature that can fly, breathe fire, and possesses ancient wisdom or formidable power appeals directly to our fundamental sense of wonder and awe.
Yeah, they're just awesome.
Dragons are also incredibly flexible in storytelling. They can be portrayed as terrifying villains, loyal companions, noble, wise beings, or even complex anti-heroes, allowing storytellers immense creative freedom to shape them to suit any narrative.
They can be anything you want them to be, really.
Pretty much. Psychologically, they still tap into that same primal blend of awe and fear we discussed earlier. Even though we know they aren't real, the image of a colossal, intelligent reptile continues to spark our imaginations. Furthermore, dragons are relatively easy to design, draw, and animate in digital media, which ensures their continued presence in our visual culture.
Practical reasons, too, then.
Sure, as long as fantasy remains popular and it shows no signs of stopping, dragons will be right there at its heart, a perpetual source of fascination.
Concrete examples truly abound in our modern world, showing their deep cultural integration. The flag of Wales literally uses a red dragon as its national symbol, a powerful testament to how dragon imagery has evolved into a proud cultural icon, far beyond mere myth.
And you can see fans at sports events wearing dragon face paint, dragons on clothing, and dominating characters in video games that continue to captivate millions globally. Even in the realm of science and technology, NASA's Dragon spacecraft, built by SpaceX, is named directly in homage to this rich mythology, showing how deeply ingrained they are in our aspirations for exploration and power.
The SpaceX Dragon capsule.
Right. In conclusion, dragons have profoundly transformed from feared monsters into incredibly versatile icons, evolving from terrifying beasts to beloved fantasy favorites. They never truly went away. Instead, they adapted, shifted their roles, and continue to fire the human imagination, lurking in books, movies, games, and even on our national symbols, a constant presence.
It's lovely, isn't it, how the tales we tell ourselves never truly fade, but rather transform and continue to spark wonder in new ways. Now, just a few more related points to touch on.
Let's address a fundamental question that often comes up when we talk about mythical creatures. Did people throughout history actually believe dragons were real, tangible creatures inhabiting their world?
Yeah, did they really believe?
The answer is unequivocally yes. In many eras and societies, people widely believed that dragons, or creatures very much like them, were real. Medieval bestiaries, for example, meticulously cataloged dragons as if they were just another species living on Earth, alongside lions and bears, detailing their habits and characteristics.
Like a field guide entry.
Exactly. Even as recently as the 17th and 19th century, some naturalists included dragons in their classifications of Earth's creatures, a testament to how enduring that belief was, blending myth with early science. A Smithsonian piece specifically notes that early scholars across both Europe and China meticulously documented dragons as if they were real scaled animals, with detailed drawings and descriptions. And even early paleontologists, upon unearthing dinosaur fossils, often assumed they were dragon bones, simply because that was the closest framework they had to understand such immense reptilian remains.
And it wasn't just academics or naturalists. Practical accounts also reinforce this belief. Think about the reports of explorers. Christopher Columbus and other voyagers on their expeditions reported sightings of giant sea serpents.
Sea serpents, right.
Which, in hindsight, were most likely misidentified whales or other large, unfamiliar marine animals seen through the lens of existing fears.
In China, what were called dragon bones were widely used in traditional medicine for centuries, believed to hold healing powers, before they were correctly reclassified as dinosaur fossils.
So the belief had real-world consequences, like medicine.
Definitely. So indeed, entire societies accepted dragons as tangible monsters inhabiting their world, and it was only gradually with the advancement of scientific understanding, formal taxonomy, and detailed fossil research that dragons transitioned into the realm of pure myth and fantasy.
And these beliefs were often reinforced through cross-cultural encounters, weren't they, when explorers met new cultures?
Absolutely. When European explorers ventured to distant lands, they heard local tales of dragons, and sometimes encountered large, formidable reptiles that, in their minds, fit these descriptions, confirming their existing biases.
There's a fascinating example from 1910 involving a Dutch military lieutenant named Van Stein van Hensbroek. On Komodo Island, he learned of a giant land crocodile from the locals.
The Komodo story again.
This turned out to be the Komodo dragon, a very real lizard capable of growing up to 10 feet long, a living creature that truly seemed like a dragon to those who encountered it, blurring the lines between myth and reality.
Similarly, early Westerners arriving in China and Java encountered local water serpents or giant lizards, and, in their minds, readily categorized them as dragons, reinforcing the global reality of these creatures for a time. Missionaries arriving in Asia had the complex task of explaining the concept of Chinese dragon worship to their congregations back home, highlighting the stark cultural differences in how these beings were perceived.
A difficult translation task, I imagine.
Meanwhile, Asian visitors to Europe might have heard and brought back myths about the Leviathan or the basilisk. These cross-cultural encounters often serve to reinforce the prevailing idea that dragons were indeed real creatures found in global folklore, until scientific descriptions eventually clarified the facts, leading to their reclassification as mythical beings.
Given how widespread they are, is there anywhere in the world where dragons don't exist in mythology? It's surprisingly rare, isn't it, to find a culture without some form of powerful serpent?
It truly is exceptional. Almost every major mythology on Earth contains some form of a dragon-like creature or a great serpent. It's genuinely challenging to find a large, established culture with no serpent monster in its lore. Even indigenous Australian myths feature a rainbow serpent, though it's more of a benevolent, creative nature spirit tied to creation and water sources than a traditional, fire-breathing Western dragon.
So even there, a powerful serpent figure exists.
Right.
You can pinpoint a few exceptions, though they are quite specific. True Arctic myths, such as those of the Inuit, generally lack classic dragons, though they do have formidable sea monsters like the tusked sea hippo or other ice spirits. Maybe because there aren't many big reptiles up there.
That's the likely reason, yes. The absence might be due to the scarcity of large reptiles in Arctic regions, meaning that specific fear didn't take root as readily. Similarly, some South American Amazonian tribes might lack a specific dragon figure, choosing instead to focus on other powerful animal spirits like jaguars or anacondas as their primary mythical beings.
So different powerful animals took that role.
Exactly. However, even in these cases, the exceptions are few and small. Virtually every major region, from Africa's Tokolosh and Badu to Europe's wyverns and classic dragons, Asia's naga and long, and the Americas' feathered serpents, possesses at least powerful serpent imagery. If a myth system truly lacks a dragon, it's usually because snakes or giant reptiles aren't a prominent part of its local environment, or because its mythology centers on other powerful figures, like sky gods or other animal spirits. But even then, stories of vast sea serpents or sky monsters often fill a very similar archetypal role, proving the human need for such powerful beings to explain their world.
Finally, let's quietly marvel at the sheer, unbridled creativity of dragon myths, some of which are truly bizarre and wondrous in their details. It shows just how far human imagination can stretch when crafting these powerful stories.
They absolutely do. Take the legend of the Bakunawa from the Philippines, for instance. It's an enormous sea dragon believed to cause eclipses by attempting to swallow the moon.
Swallowing the moon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Villagers, even today, might make loud noises during an eclipse, banging pots and pans to scare the Bakunawa away, urging it to release the moon. That's a very direct and active interaction with a mythical creature.
In Japan, recount the tale of Yamato no Orochi, an 8-headed, 8-tailed dragon that regularly devoured maidens until the god Susanoo cleverly tricked and slew it, using large quantities of sake as bait to make it drunk before cutting off its heads.
8 heads and 8 tails.
Wow.
That's complex.
A lot to deal with.
From Albania, we have the multi-headed Kolshedra, a creature that devours livestock and brings terrible storms, a fearsome presence, but can sometimes be appeased with offerings, showing a more nuanced relationship of fear and attempted appeasement.
And the variations don't stop there. Human imagination truly runs wild. There are dragons that can turn invisible, dragons that demand human sacrifice, dragons that only appear on specific nights, dragons guarding magical pearl.
Magical pearls, right.
And even that Polish legend where the supposed dragon's bones turned out to be a crocodile, adding a layer of historical irony and the eventual scientific discovery.
Among the strangest details, some cultures believe dragons possess the ability to transform into humans or birds, or that a dragon's eye could turn a man to stone, like the legendary basilisk, a truly terrifying power.
Shape-shifting dragons.
Oh, wow. These extreme imaginative details reveal the boundless creativity of human myth-making. Even the weirdest dragon myth, no matter how fantastical, always connects back to those ancient fears, observations, and symbols we've explored tonight, highlighting their enduring power to fascinate and inspire us still today in countless news stories.
That's all for now. We've come to the end of our gentle little story for tonight.
And if you're still here, that's perfectly okay. Sometimes your mind just needs a little more space to wander, and that's a tender, beautiful thing. You don't have to rush off to sleep. Just be here, however you are. You deserve quiet moments like this. You deserve to rest, to be held by stillness. There's no pressure, no expectations, just soft breathing, gentle thoughts, and the hush of night.
The world is a softer place with you in it. Good night, truly. Just listen to the rain sounds now.